Welcome back. A new round of demonstrations broke out in Hong Kong earlier today. The crowds are protesting the Chinese government's announcement of new security laws that would sharply curtail freedom in the territory and bring Hong Kong even further under Beijing's control. Many fear the move will end what has been known as one country, two systems form of government that has existed since the United Kingdom surrendered control of Hong Kong back in 1997. So joining me now is the President's National Security Advisor, Ambassador Robert O'Brien. Ambassador O'Brien, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Thanks, Chuck. Great to be with you as always.
Let me start with the Hong Kong issue. What is the United States government prepared to do if Beijing goes through with basically this crackdown on Hong Kong and moves Hong Kong away from an open marketplace and an open democracy?
Well, as you know, Chuck, the Communist Party of China promised Great Britain back in 1984 with the Sino-British Declaration that Hong Kong would have a degree of autonomy and would be maintain their way of life through 2047. So now 27 years before that deadline, it looks like with this national security law, they're going to basically take over Hong Kong. And if they do, under the 1992 Hong Kong Policy Act and the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act of 2019, Secretary Pompeo would likely be unable to certify that Hong Kong maintains a high degree of autonomy. And if that happens, there will be sanctions that will be imposed on Hong Kong and China. It's hard to see how Hong Kong could remain the Asian financial center that it's become if China takes over.
And do you want that to be the response? If China does this, do you hope that the financial services community, that global corporations pull out of Hong Kong immediately?
I just don't see how they can stay. One reason that they came to Hong Kong is because there was the rule of law there. There was a free enterprise system. There was a capitalist system. There was democracy and local legislative elections. If all those things go away, I'm not sure how the financial community can stay there. And I think you're also going to have a terrible brain drain. I think Hong Kong citizens, many of whom can travel under certain circumstances, could travel to the United Kingdom or seek refuge other places. They're not going to stay in Hong Kong to be dominated by the People's Republic of China and the Communist Party. So I think if China goes through and imposes this law, which I think would be a big mistake, I think it's going to be very difficult for the people of Hong Kong.
Do you really think China is going to be nervous about sanctions and that's going to stop them at this point? It seems as if he's so nervous about the demonstrations. Is a threat of sanctions enough to get China to pull back?
Well, I think what we can all be proud of are the people of Hong Kong who have taken to the streets to show all of us who enjoy democracy and the rule of law in our countries how precious that is. And they're out in the streets this weekend demonstrating that they want to be free people, that they want to elect their own leaders and have the right to worship as they see fit and earn a living the way they see fit. So, look, China is dependent on capital from the rest of the world. To build their economy and grow their middle class, they're dependent on liquidity and financial markets. If they lose access to that through Hong Kong, that's a real blow to Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. So I hope they'll take that into account as they contemplate their next step.
You know, over the last 6 months when these demonstrations began, the president was in negotiations on a big trade agreement with Xi and China. And during that time, he himself never really got tough, never stood up in support of the demonstrators. Others in the administration did, but he was careful, and a lot of reporting said he didn't want to upset the trade deal. Did that turn out to be a mistake?
No, I don't think it was a mistake. We want good relations with China and with the Chinese people, but unfortunately we're seeing just action after action by the Chinese Communist Party that makes it difficult. And with respect to the trade deal, we'll see if they live up to it. But we're dealing in a new world now with Corona. They unleashed a virus on the world that's destroyed trillions of dollars in American economic wealth that we're having to spend to keep our economy alive, to keep Americans afloat during this virus. So we're in a very different world. The cover-up that they did of the virus is going to go down in history along with Chernobyl. We'll see an HBO special about it 10 or 15 years from now. And so we're in a different place with China as we speak today, Chuck.
Well, I understand that, but it's interesting you bring that up because I want to put together for the first 3 months of this year when this virus first poked its head up, the president was pretty soft when it came to pinning the blame on China. Take a listen, Ambassador.
You trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi.
President Xi loves the people of China. He loves his country, and he's doing a very good job with a very, very tough situation.
Our relationship with China is very good. Maybe it's closer because of what's happened here. It came out of China, and it's one of those things that happen. It's nobody's fault.
Now, that last quote was from March 14th, and the president's rhetoric has changed since then. There's no doubt. But are you concerned that that sort of soft relationship with Xi, publicly praising him all the time, gave Xi comfort that he could do these things in Hong Kong without a lot of other than rhetorical retribution?
No, I don't think so. And I think the thing we have to focus on with the virus and what the president did is for the first time in the Oval Office briefing on the 28th of January, when I raised with the president that this was a significant national security threat, he immediately, against the advice of many of his other advisors, he immediately imposed a travel ban on China on the 30th. 2 days later, it was profile and courage, and it was something that he was criticized for by his political opponents and by many in the media. That saved countless lives. I think that's the thing that we have to focus on with China. Now, we were hoping that China would allow CDC doctors into China. We were hoping that China would give us more information on the virus and give us some of the genetic information we needed. Unfortunately, China did none of that. And so, look, we're in a very different place with China right now, and the president's made that clear. But, the Chinese didn't do what they said. We've also learned that at the time that they cracked down internally and refused to allow people from Hubei and Wuhan to travel throughout China, they allowed those folks to travel to Europe. And a large part of the infection that came to America didn't come from China. It was when we closed off China, and I asked my fellow NSAs in European countries to cut off travel. They didn't, and the virus spread to Europe and then back to the U.S. China should have cut off all the travel out of Hubei and Wuhan like they did internally in China. So we've learned a lot of things, and it's disconcerting. But we'll move forward. We'll defeat this thing going forward, and America will come out stronger.
Should the public be reassured or concerned about this relationship with China when it comes to the vaccine? So, for instance, if China has a vaccine first and our relations are as heated as they appear to be right now, is it possible the world doesn't see that vaccine? We don't see that vaccine? Or would you trust a vaccine out of China?
Well, we're going to get to the vaccine first. We're doing tremendous work on therapies and vaccines, and once we get them, we'll share them not only with America, but we'll share them with the world. One of the things it won't do, though, is it won't bring back the 90,000+ Americans, grandparents, parents, frontline healthcare workers, first responders who've died as a result of this virus. And we mourn with their families. Our heart goes out to them. The president mourns with them and grieves with them. And we're thinking of them. So we'll get this virus under control. We'll have vaccines. We'll have therapeutics. We're moving rapidly using American innovation. We're going to stop the Chinese from hacking into our universities to steal that information. And we're going to get the vaccine, and we're going to get out to the whole world. And I think America is going to come out on top on this one, Chuck.
Very quickly, on the mask debate, it seems that the president is the one debating. I know one of your deputies is a big proponent of wearing a mask. Are you concerned that an example isn't being set by the president?
Chuck, this is my mask that I wear at the office every day. I'm not wearing it here because the cameraman's 6 feet away from me and you're in the studio. So we're safe. I'll put it on when we leave. But we wear the mask in the White House, and the president's wore a mask where necessary. He did so at the Ford plant. But when the president's out speaking to the American people, or when he's speaking and if we meet with them in the Oval Office, our seats are always moved 6 feet or so away from the Resolute desk. Then there are times when you don't need to wear the mask. But I think Governor DeWine was spot on when he talked about office workers wearing the mask. And mask usage is going to help us get this economy reopened. And we do need to get the country reopened because we can't get left behind by China or others with respect to our economy. But look, I'm a proponent of masks. Matt Pottinger, who you referenced before, is a proponent of masks. And many, many people in the White House are wearing them, and the West Wing are wearing them. And we hope that's an example for other folks that when they go back to work, that they'll wear masks at their offices as well.
Ambassador O'Brien, I appreciate you coming on, sharing the administration's views, and I hope you have a safe Memorial Day weekend.
You too, my friend. Thank you, Chuck.
Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe, and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.